is Frank Savage. I have been in the gaming industry for about 20 years now. These guys have been some of them longer than me, so don't say why.
I thought you win from that.
You win. I know.
You got to wait 2 years.
Okay, fine. That's why I'm standing up, I guess, because I'm older. Give you my background first, and I'll let these guys talk about what they're currently working on. I'll show you a little video of what I'm working on first, and then everybody gets to plug their thing that they're doing as well. Because that's part of this is we get to shamelessly plug what we're doing as well. I got my start down at Origin Systems down in Austin, Texas. For those of you who remember what Origin was, they used to make really great games. Now they're EA's, equivalent of Impulse or Steam. Doesn't that make me really happy? I did Strike Commander and Wing Commander 3 down there. I was the technical director of Wing Commander 3. I had license plates that said Wing Commander 1 on them before I started at Origin, so pretty bad geek, pretty big gamer before this, so it's great to show up here and actually be a fan and someone who works in the industry, which is cool. After Origin, I went to Fox Interactive Technologies over in Chicago, did Mech Commander at that company. That company was acquired by Microsoft, which is how I got to Seattle. I did 10 years at Microsoft before I successfully escaped. Did Mech Commander 2 at Microsoft. Then I went to work at Xbox, mostly with these fine gentlemen, where we all grouped together in ATG and managed to carve out our own little empire before they found out and managed to disband most of us. And Xbox 360 then came along, and I had a lot to do with that as well. And then I was part of the XNA Game Studio team. My dev team put together the XNA Game Studio product and the XNA framework. After that, I successfully escaped and started a little tiny, actually went to a little tiny startup company that was already in existence that did the Blade 3D engine. And we've turned it into something quite a bit interesting, I think, that a lot of you are going to like, which is called Jumala. And it's going to let you both play and create your own games without having to program, with a very rich palette of 3D content. And it's gone public for the first time here at PAX. If you go to the Jumala.com website, you can grab it and try it. I have a little video that's going to show you here real quick. So with that, I would like to introduce at the far end here, Jeff Pobst.
Thank you, sir. Before we talk about me, and I'll do as much of that as I can, one of the reasons I think it's so cool, Frank worked on XNA, and I don't know how much you guys know about it. It was the first time anybody could make a game at home and put it on their console. Never been done before. And the amount of things they had to do with management, with politics, with stuff internal, and then the things they had to do with tech. I mean, that was now everyone expects I can make games, I can put them up, I sell them if I want to on the indie channel, but that didn't exist before. It was a glimmer in his eye. So I think that's a big deal. So I'm Jeff Pobst. I started in the game industry on King's Quest Mask of Eternity at Sierra. Yeah. And it's the King's Quest everyone hates. Let's just put it out there. No, and the reason is it was a cool 3D action game that they decided to call King's Quest. And so the King's Quest people wanted an adventure game like all the other King's Quests that they had loved. And here's this kind of cool Diablo meets Tomb Raider action game that they didn't want. And if you wanted a cool Diablo meets Tomb Raider action game, you didn't want it to be King's Quest. So it was a perfect example, actually, of a game that was actually fun, but completely for the wrong audiences. And I think we'll talk more about that kind of stuff there. Sierra was really great to me. We got to make a bunch of games, and then I became Sierra's first external producer. And I got to work with these amazing external teams. Before that, Sierra had always made games internally or bought the companies. And now we're working with Valve on Half-Life, with Relic on Homeworld, with Gearbox on Opposing Force. And I got to be the producer for the Half-Life series, the Homeworld series, Lord of the Rings, and several others. Got to ship a ton of titles. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. Then, like Frank was saying, Sierra, Vivendi, it kind of changed. And so I ended up working at a small indie studio for a little while, and then ended up with these guys at a really cool group called, it was the Advanced Technology Group. But what it was a worldwide consulting group who would go around and help people make the games the best they wanted it to be. Microsoft didn't have an agenda. It was just like, let's go out, let's help make the games the best they can be, and then games on the Xbox One, and then Live, and then Xbox 360 would be better. And this was part of the team that really made that happen, and that was a ton of fun. 5 years ago, after the launch of the 360, a group of us left and formed Hidden Path Entertainment, a small developer in Bellevue. There's about 35 of us now. And we've worked on several things. We're probably best known for Defense Grid. It's a downloadable tower defense game on XBLA and PC, and it's done really well. And then in the last couple of years, we just got to announce it last week. We've been working with Valve on the Counter-Strike series. And we have the new trailer for Counter-Strike Global Offensive that we can show you now. Hidden Path from Valve, and now I'm going to introduce Mark Subotnick.
Hi, Mark Subotnick. I've got my start in gaming at Sega back in '93 in the Genesis days, and actually met Mark here to the right of me at that time, and another great time in gaming when there was a lot of great product coming out on consoles. Worked in the test group there, and then eventually, after 7 years at Sega, left. It was a big startup time in the Bay Area, and everybody was running for the .com gold rush, and I got caught up in a bit of that. Worked on some cool stuff, and then joined these gentlemen at Xbox. And currently I'm at Intel, so I mean I don't have a great trailer to show you. I don't have a big plug, but I think if you walk out there those doors, and there's a giant room that has a big enough plug there for Intel. A lot of great PCs and a lot of great gaming machines. And my background at Intel actually was, believe it or not, to go run a game team there, and that's why I left Microsoft. Unfortunately, the product that we were working on got canceled due to a platform decision on Intel's side. But excited to be here with you all.
Are there any PC gamers in the room?
Thank
Just a couple. You might have heard the title.
You might have heard of the title. It was Project Offset. So unfortunately, that title, it's not coming out. But those guys have gone on to do a lot of great things, and hopefully you're enjoying their fun. And I'm looking forward to talking with you about fun and these gentlemen as well.
Okay. So hello, I'm Mark Griffin. I'm currently at OnLive as their development relations manager. I started off with Bot here at Sega of America, working on games like Sonic 2, working on Echo the Dolphin, then working my way to EA, and then off to Microsoft.
Yeah.
That was very short.
Yes. Sorry.
Quick intro. shameless plugs?
Yeah, come to our booth. We're showing upstairs in the expo hall.
You might get a console.
So talk a little bit about OnLive. I don't know if everyone knows about it. And it's pretty cool.
So it's a cloud-based gaming service where you actually stream your games over the internet from Post, their high-end PCs, and you can run them on tablets, iPhones, iPads,
PCs.
Macs.
PCs.
Intel-based.
Intel-based,
yes.
With core inside.
Missing spit guard on it.
We can share it.
Yeah, they didn't give him a phone piece.
Right there.
Oh, there you go.
Here it comes.
Yeah, it is.
It's coming.
You're gonna need to do something.
Isn't this fun?
Are you having fun? Yeah, we can share this one. That's fine.
Oh, she's coming. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephanie.
Use this one.
Let's just share.
We can share
We
this.
can just share out this one. We're good.
All right. So
Let's jump into the fun.
part of the reason that we wanted to have something like this is that, as many of you may have noticed, that one of the trends in gaming that we're seeing recently, and that's actually been here all along for any of you who've been part of the mod community for all these years, is that there's a large trend in gaming today towards user-generated content, right? And there has been for years and years and years. It's just growing larger and larger as the gaming communities get larger and larger. And in fact, most of the gaming companies have started to realize this as well. When they start shipping things in Warcraft 3 was one of the biggest first games to do that, where they shipped the map editors. Command & Conquer had map editors. StarCraft 2 has a map editor in it. Halo has Forge in it. When you start to see those kinds of things happening, right, it's a sign, hey, you know what, they want you guys to help give the game some legs, all right? Well, that's great, and I'm sure you guys really appreciate that. God knows I did. But one of the things that may be missing from that is, we've been trained for decades, in some cases, to do this. And a lot of what we know sometimes doesn't make it out. And you guys know what's fun because you play it every day, right? I mean, you get done playing StarCraft, and man, that was really fun. Okay, well, what was fun about it? Oh, well, it was really fun. And sometimes you don't think about what was really fun. And so what we want to try and do is help you guys break that down from what we've learned over the years in this industry. When we've had to go work with publishers and game developers, when we were at Microsoft, at ATG, we would do this all the time. We would go to developers, and sometimes their games weren't fun. They thought they were fun, but sometimes they weren't fun. In fact, we won't name names, of course, maybe not. But but in a lot of cases, a lot of the games that we saw weren't necessarily fun. And so we're going to talk about some of the things that we saw, maybe not in specifics, in specific examples, but certainly in some of the things that we experienced, so that as you guys begin to move into this user-generated era, and you begin to play with things like these types of editors, or hopefully Jumala, you'll go in and you'll have a better sense of what to do in order to make these kinds of things more fun. So, start with this end, and we'll work this way.
I'll give you 2 quick tips. First, no matter how hard you've worked on something, has nothing to do with how fun it is. And this sounds kind of crazy, but even the most pro people have a problem with this. Because you work really hard, it is equally as hard to make a bad game as it is a good game. It really is. And you can work really hard on something, and it's so hard to separate how much I spent on it, how hard I worked on it, from how do other people who have no idea how much time I spent on something think about it. And so don't, try not to, if you build a great mod, if you build some kind of new app with the kind of software that Frank's company is making that lets you build your own games, or the software you used to make with XNA or whatever, don't assume that the longer and the harder and the more you put into it, the better it is. The only way you can tell if it's better is when you give it to other people who don't know a thing about it and you watch their reaction. It really is true. And I had a second thing, but I forgot, and I'm sure it'll come out.
That made me think of a few things. So one, there's a famous story, and I won't talk about the title, but when we actually, a few of us were new to Microsoft, we were talking about a title that's being made over in Microsoft Game Studios, and there was a famous producer that was brought in to help work on this franchise, and famous, so to speak, but a lot of very, very well experienced person. And he sat us down and we said, we were at lunch, he said, how's it going with the team? How's the transition to Microsoft? He said, I don't know if they're playing a joke on me or not, but they actually handed me a document and it says, fun document. And we just started busting up. And he said, they have to be joking with you. And he said, that's funny because no, I'm not joking. There's literally a document that says the fun document. You can't sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and write out something that's going to be fun. There's no easy button to push that's going to be fun. And no matter how hard you work on it, no matter how long an artist spends on something, it doesn't mean that you have to keep it. Often, the discovery of fun, which is a very difficult process in making games, is trying stuff and throwing it away. Trying it again and throwing it away. And it's difficult often, as some of you who are in the indie world and want to get into actually making a published game will find out, to get anybody willing to give you money to try things, throw it away, and try things and throw it away, and trust that eventually you're going to find fun, which is unfortunately a lot of the problems that we have in this industry of why some games aren't fun. And it's a difficult process. Iteration is one of the things that you're going to find is key to finding fun. And being really willing to let something be thrown away. I was blown away by the first time I started working with some great artists, and they would be willing to just trash something that they spent a lot of time on that was beautiful, that by any means is a great piece of art that just doesn't fit in the game.
Yeah, I think to harken both of those points, definitely iterate and then play test. Some of the best teams out there, everyone's playing the game from the receptionist all the way to the CEO. And everyone has to sit there and take their Fridays off and take their sleeves, roll them up, and actually get into the game, and not just cursory test it out, but just the cinematics. I mean, really get into all the nitty-gritties, do your focus test, do your research, and just iterate. And like they said, don't be married to any one game design. See what's fun, see what sticks, and then just go in that direction.
I think when you're trying to make an experience, you say, okay, what if I have space aliens fighting lobsters? Okay, that'll be fun. And you say, okay, I want to do something. You have some idea. And what you really want to think about is typically a single experience, a single loop, right? I'm going to do something, and that's going to change the screen in this way. And then I'm going to have a decision to make. And based on that decision, I'm going to push some button or click some mouse or something, and then something else is going to happen on the screen. And you almost got to step back and kind of break it up and say, okay, what's this feedback loop? What's this thing I'm going to do? Am I going to be dodging stuff, and that's going to be fun because dodging and I get to see it coming, or I'm going to be clicking when the line comes down and it's going to make a note, and I'm going to be thinking I'm playing guitar, or whatever the mechanic is, right? There's going to be typically a central mechanic of my fun experience. And one of my colleagues, and our colleague, Mark Toronto, he's a great designer. He's a great designer. I think I said it was. He is. Mark Toronto.
He is still alive.
Yes, sorry. Says, I look up at the shelf of all the games that I still haven't finished or haven't played yet, and none of them are up there because they were too easy. Right? They're all up there because I got frustrated, or it was too hard, or I stopped playing, I got bored. And so there's this idea of how do I make sure that I create challenges, but challenges that everyone can overcome, so that they keep overcoming them.
Yeah, who are you making the game for, right? There's one title I recall was solid narrative, really good ideas, not great mechanics. But the one area they focused on innovation was changing a first-person controller for an Xbox game. And we were like, why would you do that? Halo's kind of successful and people like the way they play. Why would you give people a new way to access your game? And they were like, no, this is where it's going to be fun. People are going to be able to play with these new, I just couldn't get it across to this person making this game. That's the last thing that's fun. People want to pick it up. They want to be able to find something accessible, get into it, and get a reward pretty quickly to say, oh, hey, good job, and that gives us this sense of, hey, I'm accomplishing something that often tends to lead to fun. So it's remembering who you're making the game for. Often there's a lot of us that think we've got this great idea and we've got this vision, and once we deliver it, you're all going to fall in love with us and we're going to all be successful and everybody's going to have a great time. not usually the case, actually. It's the people that are a little willing to be a little more humble and focused on that. Who's my audience and why would they actually care about this? And giving them simple mechanics often delivers fun.
Yeah, intuitive gameplay controls. One of my favorite games is Bomberman, back to Jeff's point. It's a very simple loop. Play a bomb, let it explode, try and kill your opponents. Now games are so overcomplicated on different fronts. You got to get back to just core gameplay.
And that's the thing that's really happening on the indie scene, right? Is you're seeing a lot of simple mechanics that are done beautifully with exceptional ideas. It doesn't happen as much anymore, so maybe everyone knows this now. But for several years, people come to me, or any of us, and say, "I've got this great game idea, do you want to pay me for it?" And in the game industry, no one pays for ideas. We've got more ideas than we have time to make. The hard part in the game industry, what people do pay for, is the team or the group who builds it, and that execution. So I actually believe, and you guys could probably come up with a good exception and beat me on this, I believe almost any idea can make a good game, and almost any idea can make a bad game. I don't think it's idea dependent. I think it really is about execution.
Yep, and the teams.
And the team.
Yep.
Yeah, I completely agree with that too. One of the things that, to build on a lot of the things that were said here, that happened on one of the games I worked on, in fact, was going back to the easy and hard thing, we worked on Mech Commander. And Mech Commander, as you, for those of you who played it, was part of the BattleTech universe. And BattleTech is a paper game involving, obviously giant mechs that are trying to kill each other on a large battlefield. And if you've ever played the BattleTech paper game, the BattleTech paper game generally involves about 30 to 40 minute turns in which, after having spent an enormous amount of time looking things up on tables, everyone misses. And then you start the next round. And then you start the next round.
You forgot to say highly successful paper game.
Exactly. Yeah. This was, and to be clear, this was an incredibly successful paper game. Okay. And when we went to the incredibly successful paper game designers and said, "That's not going to play real well for people who play these on a computer," they were like, "Well, why?" And I'm like, "Well, because lots of things missing isn't really intriguing to people." "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, because nothing happens." And they're like, "Well, what do you mean nothing happens?" I'm like, "Nothing happens. All this, I mean, there's going to be lots of effects going off, the smoke will clear, and everybody will be like, hey, yeah, nothing happened." And I'll just kind of stand here. I guess we'll all squeeze off another volley and see what happens this next time. Maybe then something will get hit. And I could tell you stories about Commander for about 3 hours that would make you laugh. But what wound up happening was that the game became very difficult, very, very quickly. And the reason why was because we began to design for not the target audience of the game, but in fact for the CEO of the organization. And he began playing the game religiously every day and got really good at it. And he was like, "This mission's too easy." And I'm like, "You play it 9 hours a day, sir." I would hope it would be easy.
But fast forward 10 years later, and I'm a new producer. I'm on Homeworld. It's a great game. The team up at Relic is an awesome team. It's a small team. They've been making the game for 3 years. And we're playing this, and now at Sierra we're getting builds that are starting to, we're working really hard in the multiplayer, but all our testers are coming in and they're saying, "Man, this game kicks my butt. I just can't get through it. It's so hard." And we finally looked at it and said, "You know what, this is way too hard for people." And I became known as the evil guy who was going to ruin Relic's game forever. Because I forced the issue for us to cut the difficulty in half. And if you remember, the reviews all said it was way too hard. I didn't cut it enough, right? And we didn't push hard enough as the publisher. And it wasn't because the Relic guys were wrong. They had just played the game for 3 years. They had become complete experts at that game, and it was impossible for them to see it anymore the way a brand new person saw it. So for them, for us this year, we're doing all these focus tests, we're putting in people who are going, "Wow, it's way too hard." And what I now know, after years of producing, is I needed to bring the Relic people down, have them watch the play tests, have them see people having problems, and we did that later on other games. But that never happened. We never brought them down, and they just didn't believe. They thought we were watering down the game. And it turns out if you're really good at something, you want a really hard challenge. That's what keeps it fun. And if you're not good at something, you want it hard enough that it keeps you interested, but not so easy it's boring. And that's the hard part of making a game, is finding that balance.
Yep. And this is, I mean, all of you have probably experienced this at some point in your life, especially when you were young children, right? Can you, I mean, remember back, you were somewhere between the ages of 5 and 12 in the neighborhood, right? And you had some game that all of you and the kids in the neighborhood played, and the new kid moved in, right? And the new kid comes and says, hey, what are you guys playing? And you'd tell them the name of the game, and you'd explain the rules, and the kid would look at you funny. That's really? You guys do that? That's fun for you? Well, it is fun for you because you guys had invented all the rules, you knew it really intimately, you'd been playing it for years, you knew the idiosyncrasies, you knew every single strategy that was involved, right? The simple hide-and-seek game that had started at hide-and-seek had developed into this esoterica, and if you were to write down all the rules, would actually occupy about 38 pages long, in fine print, with sub-paragraphs, and rules for different times of day, and rain versus fog, versus when Deirdre's playing, because she has to have this rule because her hair is too long, and if this thing happens, right?
If only you could tell a story, Frank.
And these exact same things happen when you're trying to design your game. You get very, very wrapped up in it, and these special case kinds of rules are the things that your players who've never seen it before are not going to be able to wrap their heads around at all.
And you see these games like, you know, Braid as an example, or Minecraft, right? I mean, these games that have a very simple idea that then can grow and become more complex as you become better at it. Those are the gems, right? Those are the things we're all looking for when we're trying to make a new experience. How can we find something simple, easy to pick up, that then gets deeper and deeper? I've heard there's this game called chess that kind of is like...
level of expertise.
Yeah. And it's entirely up to you how deep you want to go into it. Right? I mean, there are people, I hear there are people in the world who are really good at it.
Yeah. But they can only play other people who are really good at it.
That's true. Computers apparently don't play it too long. So each of us, I'm sure, has a genre game that we play that we really enjoy. So I'll start with Mark.
Yeah, start with Mark.
So what's your favorite genre?
I think I'm going to have to go with the easy one, which is shooters. It's sort of developed so much in the last 15 years when we first played Wolfenstein and gone on from there. It's revolutionized how everyone's interacting with computers, consoles, and now it's going to tablets and smartphones. But yeah, I'm going to stick with shooters.
Oh boy, it's a tough one for me. So pre the new child at my house, it would have been RPGs because I actually could afford the time to put into them. Now it's things with a good narrative that I can pick up and jump back into and remember where I was. So I'm really into a lot of the action adventure games, and I'm huge fan of trying to get narrative into our industry in a form that actually reflects this debate of whether we're art or not and whether we're better than movies or not. It's just, hey, let's tell a good 3-act story and then we'll have that conversation. So.
No, I don't really like golf games that much. No, it's actually it's funny for me. I love games with narrative. I play every Bioware game, every Bethesda game. I really love the deep story and the open explorer world, the Rockstar games. I love those. But for me, I also like games that are cool set systems. Right? There's rules and there's lots of different ways to dive into the systems and explore that. And sometimes, you know, you'll see that in a 5-on-5 PvP shooter like Counter-Strike. My hands are not as good as my mind is in that game, but that's okay. And sometimes you'll see that in a strategy game. I just love the simplicity, the idea you can do a Civ game in 3 hours in Civilization Revolutions on the console. I think that's awesome. And actually one of the best strategy games on console is Madden. I really like Madden.
I'm so there's two that are, when one of these comes out, my family just decides the day is going away for a while. So one is certain classes of RPGs, so the thought that there's a new Elder Scrolls coming out really made the family very upset.
They're going to lose you for a while.
Yeah, no happiness was in the household when I was describing that to them. You're losing their faces. They looked at me like, Daddy's going to war. Exactly. He's going to be gone for a couple months. It's okay. So that was really bad. And RTS is okay because my son and I will play those together, so he at least can go to war with me now. So we play a lot of StarCraft 2 together. Still, we're waiting for the expansion. If not for that, that will be very exciting. It was a little bit of a challenge playing with my son because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist with StarCraft, and he was 11.
You were nice.
I tried to be nice. I tried to remember he was my boy, and sometimes I did. But yeah, no, it worked out well in the end. So those are the two that I'm really kind of into. So then there's the one that I'm sure we can all find really funny at the moment for, which was, what was the most not fun moment in game? Because I'm sure we all have one.
So we'll have to divulge that we were testers. So a lot of people, this is a quick segue, a lot of people when I got in the industry working at Sega, they go, oh, Sega! That's so cool. You get paid to play video games all day long? That is awesome. And I go, yeah, not so much. And they didn't really understand why. And it's like, so can you imagine maybe, I don't know if any of you even remember the Pico system, but like when we were working at Sega, there was a kids book system that we had to test.
Kid console.
And like any game that was released on the Genesis went through our test department. So there was a lot of not so great games, and you have to spend weeks, months, 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day if you wanted overtime playing this game.
And it's broken.
And it's not released yet, and it's still really no fun. So for me to pick on one would damn near be impossible. Mickey Pico is definitely brutal. And I was actually the test manager for one of the shifts at that point, and I would, if I didn't like the way somebody was performing in their job, punishment was like 2-player Pico. We got a lot of broken Pico systems back then. So yeah, God, pick on one. For me, it's just the thing that if someone's going to force me to put time into their product and they don't give me a reason to continue playing it soon enough, I'm putting that down. There's times that I really wanted a game to be fun, and I would kind of punish myself. No, I know this is fun. Other people said it was fun. The reviews said it was fun. The trailer looked awesome. I love this IP. There's got to be something in here that's fun. And I would just eventually get to the point where, broken controller, lots of levels of frustration with gaming. And so it's,
Put it on the shelf and not tell them.
Yeah. I mean, when you talked about the looking at the shelf, and being in this industry, we get a lot of product for free sometimes, right? So I have this massive shelf of games, and I often look and go, why didn't I finish all of these? And it's scary how few of them I actually get through.
I remember the flip side. It's much more memorable for me when a game really pops out. And I remember... I would go back to it sucks in a second. But that first Prince of Persia on the Xbox One stood out so much for all of us. So we're in a group, we get every Xbox game. 630 games come our way. You think this would be good. You can't spend time on 630 games. So you pretty much look at the first 15 minutes, first half hour of a lot of them.
Crap.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
Yeah. And I remember when Ubisoft Montreal did that Prince of Persia's in Sands of Time, we all just went, oh. And I remember when Breakout, or Burnout came from Criterion. The whole group went, right? And those are moments where you just go, they've transcended, they've done something.
Crashing stuff into each other's fun. Why didn't we ever do this before?
Yeah. But I'll tell you what I really think is very unfun, and it's not it's not a particular game, it's kind of across all games. And it's not the thing you work on intuitively when you build a game. And that is how I get from deciding to play the game to playing, right? The install. How many people have installed an MMO in the last couple of years? Was that fun? How many hours did you spend not doing anything? Right? Even the way consoles have gone. How many Sony games now do you install on the console? Right? Or even an Xbox game where it's kind of required. I mean, I loved LA Noire, but it was pretty much required that I installed it on the Xbox's hard drive in order to have the load times work. I think, it doesn't seem, if you're making a game, I don't want to work on install, that's so boring. But it can kill your game experience. It can make people go, why am I doing this? Or not come back to it. And these days, you know, the old saying, if you tried to go to your boss and say, look, this install is awful, it takes too long, it's a horrible experience, they go, they've already bought the game. And you're like, oh, yeah, okay. But that's not true anymore, right? DLC is so important, continue not returning the game, you know, to get for use sales. People being engaged for a long time is now a key, important part of actually having a game that turns profitable. Oh, and I don't know if you guys know this, right? You think about the big evil corporations that are publishers. Something like 80 to 85% of games, huge percentage, do not make money. They lose money. Now, hopefully they lose just a little. And then the 15% that make money, they tend to make a lot. So as long as you're a publisher with a big enough portfolio, and you're putting out a lot of games, if one of them is a real big hit, it covers your losses on the other. And that's how the business works. But most games don't make back their money. So they were really worrying about how can I... It's not like I'm trying to fleece the audience when I'm the big evil corporation. I mean, there are some evil and bigness there. I'm not trying to hide it all. But you got to understand, they're also kind of desperate because they lose money a lot of the time. So they're trying to find that time when they aren't losing money and try and make it work so that they can make more games. And it's kind of a different business than people often think it is.
So I'm going to have to go with some of the full motion video games that we got to test back when the Sega CD came out.
I had forgotten those nightmares.
There was a long year.
You put it out of your memory.
Exactly. So some of these games are pretty good. Like Dragon's Lair was sort of an FMV game. Really, really cool animations running off of Laserdisc back in the arcades. Then the CD came around. We had games like Night Trap. It's kind of like the first sort of adult game, which was about Sewer Shark, exactly. But I'm going to have to go with either NXS or Marky Mark. Make your own game. It really wasn't much of a game at all.
You have credit in both of those.
I think, yes. Thank you for that. Thank you. But yeah, it was more the genre and not the game. But yeah, some of that stuff just didn't transcend time.
Did not transcend time. That's a polite way to put it. Yeah, when we were working on Wing Commander 3, a lot of a significant fraction of Wing Commander 3 was obviously going to be all this live action video that we felt needed to be in the game in order to convince everybody that we were an interactive movie. And so I was one of the people who was sentenced, is a kind way to put it, to go look at all of those things. And I was frankly, it was one of those things that was like a train wreck. I couldn't look away from it. Because I couldn't believe that there were people who were actually publishing games in which the gameplay mechanic was, watch a movie, pick A or B, you pick B, you died. Okay? Watch a movie, pick A. Hey, congratulations, you got to watch another movie now. Pick A or B. A again. No, then you died. Okay, so watch the movie A. Watch the next movie. B. Watch the next movie. Oh God, I'm afraid. B. No! Really? Yeah, there was a lot of replay value, I guess. And I mean, you gotta understand something. There was no saving, folks. You started back at the beginning. And the saved game was there was a sheet of paper next to your desk where you literally wrote A, B, D, A, B, D, A. Wow.
The world of autosaves is a fine thing.
It was an amazing innovation in the game industry.
Yeah,
someone invented that. But the reason we had to do these was because we were looking at the different movie compression schemes that people had and trying to pick which one we were going to use in Wing Commander. And I got to play, the rough term, all of these things to see which one so that we could pick the best one. And then, of course, like all game developers, we just wrote our own. So,
the autosave thing is an interesting thing to kind of understand the industry a little bit too. When you're designing a game and you're responsible for entertaining a bunch of people, you don't want to make something that's boring or too easy, and you get these game designers, and some of them are good and some of them maybe not so good. They feel like they're kind of competing with the audience, and so this idea that you could save your game. This was actually a big argument in the industry for several years. We're just making it way too easy now. We're going to let people actually just continue from where they are. And we've matured as an industry to say, no, forcing you the pain of death to go back 10 hours may not be in your own best interest as a gamer.
Some people don't think it is fun.
Yeah.
To replay stuff over Okay.
Well, auto saves and then auto balancing, right? If you die
Yeah.
at one level, then you make the landings easier, which is really to give you guys the next chapter in the game. So
Our
don't
forefathers
frustrate.
think we're wimping out.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
No need to game here.
I think since accessibility has come forward, we've seen an explosion of new gamers, right? And so the hardcore few who want it to be their precious little gem, okay, you have to give up on that to some degree. But we've got a mass of people out there that love playing games. And
Or play in hardcore mode. Almost every
Yeah.
game.
Well, that's a new thing, right?
Give you nightmare mode, but
That's
we got to
right.
make it accessible.
You load up Gears of War, there's like 8 difficulty levels. That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, questions. You guys, I'm sure, have questions for these seasoned
There's a mic in the middle there.
veterans.
Just
There's a mic in the
Time to
middle.
get interactive.
Run for the mic.
All right.
First grade victim.
Hello.
Hello.
I can hear you.
So, as somebody who's kind of starting up an indie team and all that, how would you say you went about drilling things in people's heads that, you know, things can't always be their way? Like, a logo they made, even when they're not that good of a designer, Photoshop, isn't as good as something done by a professional designer that's also on your team.
Test it. With other people, they don't know. I mean, frankly, if you have an intuition that something's not good enough or something's not right, probably some number of people are going to feel that same way. So you don't have to be the one to say it because you're buddies, you're working close, you're tight.
Yeah.
But if you can come up with a good way for other people to play it, it'll come up in the notes.
Even if they like threaten to leave the team for little things, like, you know, way to kind of go about saying, like, you know, like kind of grow up, like get used to it, right?
Well, I mean, at that point, there's friendship and there's business, right?
Yeah.
And at some point, you know, if there's a line between productivity and childishness,
Yeah.
right? And
There has been some famous quotes recently about taking fun out of making games in the business and things to that nature, and I would say, regardless of whether I want to get in that debate with that individual, my experience is that if you don't have fun on the team, you're not going to make a fun game. It's that simple.
yeah.
Now, not every day is fun at work, and it shouldn't be.
It's work.
It's work, but if you got an individual that's already kind of creating turmoil to that point, let them leave.
The most important thing on a game team is the people on that team.
Absolutely.
That's right.
It changes
No doubt
everything.
about it. And you've got to get along. You've got to have each other's backs. You're going to war. There ain't any other way to put it.
Daddy's going to war.
The whole team is.
I'm going to war in November when Skyrim comes up. I mean, you've got to be.
Yeah, I think you're just honest with that person. You show them the unsolicited feedback from the focus groups, and if it's not something that fits, they're going to have to see that.
And if for some reason the focus group likes what they are and you're going, what's going on here? I mean, it helps you, right? You go, okay, well, there's an audience. And that happens too for all of us. We're sure that something's crap, and then people like it. You go, oh, okay.
Yeah, I wish we could tell you stories about that all day long. Seriously.
Yes, we could.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you know what you're kind of saying when you talk about loops and depth and stuff is fun is basically more or less about mastery and being able to take a mechanic and master it and like kind of get better at it over time. Is that a fair way of putting it, or is it just?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
I'm going to say it's one example of many kinds, and we really just touched on it. At least the point I was making is there is a loop for each kind of gameplay. That's one kind of gameplay, but it's not the only kind. And one of my colleagues has this amazing thing. He calls it the attention theory of gameplay. And the idea is that you have some amount of bandwidth, and that bandwidth can be taken up making decisions, looking at things that are cool on the screen, or hearing things that are cool over the speakers. And every genre is basically a different combination of how much decisions you're making per second, or seconds per decision, how much you're seeing on the screen, and how much you're hearing, right? You have a completely different experience playing Tetris at high speed than you do playing Skyrim while you're kind of thinking about which way you want to level up as you're walking through the pretty trees. And I'm talking about this November.
I'm going to go into the pretty trees for a moment. There we are.
I just want to give you guys thoughts on density or concentration of fun versus stretching it out over game time. In an ideal world, which would you guys choose? Having a game that's very concentrated, very short, very, very fun, or drawing that out for a longer experience?
Shorter game. It's like a book. You've got to hook the person in the first chapter. Jump right on it. You definitely want to hook them and get them. I mean, there's so much other product out there with all the stuff now being offered for free. You need to grab that user in the first 15 minutes and really hook them in. So you want to give them a lot of.
I'm going to try and be like Kirk. I don't believe in the question. I think you can have both.
You can't have both.
So there's a length of the experience that's fun. Don't make that longer than it needs to be. There's a length of the game you're going to give that's a certain price that people are going to pay. If it needs to be longer, come up with another mechanic that's its right length, that is fun. And once you've got enough that you think, okay, I can sell this for what I want to sell it, then you sell that at that length. But the fun piece should be the length of as long as it's fun. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of the pacing and balancing that gets into that, but that's a thing that you tweak in focus testing and testing the game and making sure the mechanic is and the reward have a nice pace to it. And that gets, if you want to get into specifics, it's really about the genre that you're working on for that particular game. There's a great book, Flow, that goes into the psychology behind the length of time before you give a reward and how you build out those different types of pacing.
One of the things that's really important if you're kind of, let's say you want to make a difficulty curve, and you want the experience to grow more difficult over time as I've gotten better, don't make it a line, make it kind of a sine wave that grows. It gets a little harder, and now I'm going to actually make it easier than it just was, because now you feel like you're really good at it. And then I make it a little harder again, and then you feel really good at it. And you bounce around. And this book covers a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, you can watch your favorite film.
The Psychology of Flow?
I think it's, the Psychology of Flow. I would say the author's name, but it's a long Russian name that I cannot pronounce. But if you Google it, you'll find it. But yeah, I can liken this to other forms of media. If I watch a good film, they're not going to throw whatever that pacing of that film is at me constantly. They're always going to give me an opportunity to breathe and relax and center myself again before I get back up and go. And a lot of the great games, if you go back and kind of look for that curve, you'll start to see some patterns.
Yeah, we do ruin games for ourselves a bit because we see the patterns because we work on the patterns all the time.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I apologize in advance for my questions because what I'm trying to get at is inherently, it's always a tricky question to ask because the answer I'm trying to get at is basically what is their meaning of fun? And it's more of like one deeper understanding of games. And there are many ways to phrase it, but one is the closest way to do it is simply say, can the games still be considered good entertainment without being fun?
So I think the mechanism of the game can do a lot of things. If you know the name Brenda Breathwaite, I believe I'm saying that right, she's made some amazing games that make you feel awful. And they're amazing. They're really cool. She has one game where you're shipping Jews to a Holocaust location. And you're trying to optimize that. Right? And the thing that it's exploring is the emotions you feel as you try and accomplish the game mechanics. And players go through this, wait a minute, maybe I want to fail. Maybe I want to be bad at this so I'm not killing these people. Right? So this thing we call game can do a lot. What we love doing and what we make our living at is entertainment. We're trying to make things that make you laugh, enjoy yourself, kick back. But don't let it fool you. This mechanics that we use, this interactivity, it can be used for a lot of different things. And some people like, I can't think of his name, I'm sorry. There are people who make art game experiences that just make you learn something about yourself. Or there's all sorts of things game mechanics can do. I think we choose to make our living using them for entertainment purposes only. But this media we're in can do a lot of different things.
I mean, some of them can be pretty relaxing, right? I mean, if you've ever played just the Zen Garden that's in Plants vs. Zombies, right? I mean, you water the plants, you put some, you give them some plant food and everything else, and then suddenly you realize, hey, I'm kind of done. But, the music's still playing, and every now and then a coin shows up. I'm not really going to leave just yet. I'm kind of happy to just sit here. you know, nothing's going on. I got 5 minutes till my flight's leaving. I'll just wait here in the Zen garden. And that's what I, you know, or I'm walking through Skyrim in the trees. And that's just what I need right now. And it may not necessarily be fun, but it may be filling some need that I have at that particular point. And that, for that particular person, you know, whether that need is I need to be entertained, or whether that need is I need to relax, or I need to waste time, or whatever it is, that's the game can do that for you. So,
is anybody going to try and answer the question of what is fun?
You know, if I could write a book on that, I wouldn't be here lecturing. I'd have an island somewhere.
It's amazing how many theories there are out there about that. When we were researching this talk, we all compared notes, and there's no way we can sit up here and go, you know, I'll give you the equation. You know, let me write it out for you. You just do this, and you always have fun. And that's kind of why I made the reference earlier about the idea, the notion of even having a fun doc. I mean, we could probably all debate individually here what is fun to us and what makes something fun for us, and it's very hard to define that, which is why it's difficult to make great games. It's why it's difficult to have games make a lot of money, and if it was that easy, we'd be all...
I think what our years of experience and jobs are is to come up with the best first guess and then iterate.
And then iterate, that's right.
And our first guess is not right.
That's right, and there are plenty of times we take the cake out of the oven and we're like, why don't we just start with because this is not going well.
And you look at some of the great studios out there, they can afford to do this in a better way, and literally afford. They have more capital, they have more experience, they have more trust built up with the publishers, so they have more time to figure that out, which is why those companies that ship it when it's done often ship great games, right? But that costs a lot of money, a lot of time, and they spent years building up that credibility to get there. I mean, guarantee you every developer out there making whatever game you care about wishes they were in that position so they could deliver the product that way to you. We just don't all have that luxury.
5 minutes.
Yeah, 5.
Probably got to go to the next person then.
I love how they answer their starting with the Holocaust and then it is our Zen garden. I love that you guys so very like, okay, we're leaving the Holocaust. It's fun. So I'm still reeling from that a little bit, but I wanted to ask kind of focusing on workflow and the production process. You know, I understand the importance of failure as being part of a learning mechanism for developing games and really hearing them for your audience and your demographic. But I also, you know, understand that like when I have a vision of something that I want to create, if I sell it right away, you know, kind of try to pull from people what they're going to enjoy about it and what they're not going to enjoy about it, I'm kind of giving it away and selling it short before I've actually created it. So I just wanted to ask kind of what processes do you have, if any, to kind of get an idea of what's going to be beneficial to your production from your demographic before you actually create it.
Well, I keep doing that, don't I? No, but I mean, one of the things we think about is we think about kind of onion skin design.
Okay.
A great game has a core that is a fun thing to do, and then now that I've learned how to do that fun thing, then I do a thing around it, and then now that I've got that, I do a thing around that. And so I think the thing I test in your situation is, do I have a core? And if I think I have a core, now I can go back and I can work on that core, try and make that core fun. I can add a few layers onto it and then maybe go test that. And then if that works, and I change it, go back and fix what didn't work, and then I go and maybe add a few layers on top of that. And so you start from something simple and build out.
Yeah, it's a tough problem. I understand the idea from the creation point of they really won't get it until this is done. It's a scary trap, though, in game design, and what you find works more often than not is the quick prototype. You know, a lot of the times I was blown away when I first started working on games where the good designer would say, just give me some blocks moving around quickly that shows me this mechanic and we'll figure out if it's fun or not. And the teams that are like, no, but it's got to have the finalized art and the windowing mode and the debug system should have garage shading and just, you know, crazy stuff, they get lost in spending way too much time in what we call feature creep instead of just focusing on, is this core idea fun or not? And often it's scary to find out that answer. So I understand the allure of, I got to go all the way down here and then we'll know. It's best in an ideal world to be able to rapidly prototype that idea, throw it against the wall. If it sticks, great, keep moving, layer more stuff on it. If it doesn't, throw it away and try again.
Yep.
When I hear someone say it'll only play right when it looks different, that to me is like a big red flag.
That's cool. Cancel.
Abort.
Yeah, exactly. Get out.
Cool, thank you so much.
So in terms of fun as it relates to game difficulty, I mean, obviously there's a very large gap between something like Kirby's Epic Yarn, where it's not really possible to actually have a failure circumstance, to something like Demon's Souls, where the failure is very large, is actually very, very significant. And an even bigger gap to, like, say, I Want to Be the Guy, where failure is basically perpetual. I think that, do you think that from your position that you feel like there is not a whole lot of ideas as far as how you can make failure possible and significant, and yet not so far-punching as to kill the game?
I thought Princess Persia was beautiful.
Yeah, I think a lot of
No, that's not what happened. Let me try again. That made me feel good, and I just failed.
Ico, Prince of Persia, there's some mechanics out there.
I was sorry.
You were mad at me.
Yeah.
All right, so we disagree. What's that? Voodoo Vince also tried that too.
Yeah.
There's definitely been some games that have played with this notion of let me make this part of the mechanic or almost part of the reward. It's a balance issue that you get. That's why we were talking about accessibility a little bit. And the more you get dynamic accessibility into the game, where the game actually has some idea of the pacing that it ideally wants you at and how you play the game and can tailor the experience to you, the more that you can start to really give people some benefit from whatever the consequence is. I think you want to avoid the situation where you're just slamming someone constantly. No, you didn't get it. No, you didn't get it. No one finds that fun, right? I mean, maybe somebody does, but very few people do. Okay.
You said it earlier, though. Know the audience you're making the game for.
Yeah.
Other people may like it too. And one of the things we used to say when we were picking up games at Sierra is every game can be made. It just needs to be made for less money than people will pay for it.
Exactly.
Right? So if you're making a game for a small amount of people, make sure they'll buy it, and make sure you make it right for them. But it's your target audience.
Yep, it really is.
My question is, there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect between what you guys stated your preferred genres are to the games that you actually create. Why is that?
It's pretty common in the industry.
Yeah.
You see behind the curtain, right?
That's right.
So if you're making something every day long, it's more like work when you go play it.
On top of that, what is the most fun moment you've had in a game?
I gotta tell you, man, there's a reason we've all been doing this for almost 20 years or 20 years plus. It's when you get a team that works well together, and you're on that, hour, 5 a.m. in the morning, you've been working all night, and something's really funny to the team that would not be funny to anyone else outside of the world.
Yeah.
It's a magic.